Hello Flak Pak, the newest video has been posted, so check it out. Please like, share, and subscribe, and if you really like what we do, consider becoming a supporter at patreon.com/flakandpak, all one word. Your donation will be appreciated and will enable me to bring you more exclusive content from sources and locations around the globe. For the next few episodes, we're going to move to the Panzer Abwehrkanone side of the house with a look at one of the most successful aspects of the defense of France in 1940, the Hotchkiss 25mm anti-tank gun. It was officially brought into service in 1934 as the 25mm semi-automatic model 1934. It was generally referred to as the Canon D25 by the French. Through pre-war sales of the gun and captured examples being reused by their new owners, the 25mm Hotchkiss saw service in the Spanish Civil War, the Winter War, the War of Continuation, World War II, obviously. But the farthest flung example of its service comes from the French themselves, having used them in the First Indochina War in Southeast Asia. The primary users, other than France, of the 25mm Hotchkiss anti-tank gun were Nazi Germany, United Kingdom, Italy, Finland, Romania, and the Republic of Spain during the Spanish Civil War. Even the U.S. could make this list with 400 examples of the gun purchased for testing and evaluation, but these were never used in combat, nor were they issued to troops. At the start of World War II, it was the main anti-tank weapon of the French infantry. By mid-1940, about 6,000 examples were in service. In the Battle of France, the Hotchkiss was used successfully when deployed in the ambush role. It's not very big. When you see a picture of it, it looks a lot bigger in the pictures than it is in person. It's 3.8 meters long, just right around 2 meters wide. The height is maybe a meter and 250 millimeters, 25 centimeters. It's not that big. I'm old and fat and I could run and jump right over it. But it's small, so it was able to be concealed relatively easy. So it was excellent in the ambush role. The little diminutive gun had a capability to disable, but not usually to outright destroy Germany's frontline tanks like the Panzer III or IV. When they came under attack from the 25mm, it would punch holes, and unless it hit something important, they could come back. They could bail out of the vehicle, come back later, and recover the vehicle and usually drive it away. But there would be 25mm holes in the armor, so they were returned to service fairly quick. We got to remember, most of the German tanks at this time only had 30mm armor on them. All the Panzer IIIs, Panzer IVs, and the early Stugs that were used in 1940 all had really thin armor on them. So a 25mm projectile in a neck-down case like the Hotchkiss would have no trouble breezing right through it. But like I said, because of its diminutive size, they were able to use it to great effect in the ambush role, even hiding it up in the girders of a bridge and firing from such a secluded and concealed position that the other French forces in the area tried to take credit for the kills that had been scored by the Hotchkiss, saying that their Renault FT tank had taken out the vehicle, but the FTs at that battle only had machine guns on them, so there was no way they could have taken them out. But they also couldn't get their brain around the fact that hidden in the girders of the bridge was this 25mm AT gun that was inflicting damage on the Germans. With the fall of France and the withdrawal of the British Army from France, hundreds and hundreds of these guns were captured by the Wehrmacht and eventually found their way into German service. They were reissued to the German troops under the designation 2.5 centimeter Pak 112, F in parentheses, the F standing for Französisch or French. Now, the technical aspects of the gun itself. The action is described as semi-automatic. As this pertains to artillery, it's a little different than as you would think of a semi-automatic pistol. And this term semi-automatic means when you initially open the breech on an empty gun, you cock the firing mechanism. You push a shell into it, and then it closes. The breech system comes up behind the shell, and it's ready to fire at that point. When you fire it, it'll recoil the barrel, automatically eject the empty round, go forward, and be ready to have another round pushed into it to close the breech mechanism to fire. So essentially, semi-automatic means you only need to cock it the first time. After that, it's ready to fire. And there is no way to decock it. On most artillery pieces, that's not an option. You have to. Another interesting aspect was, and it was kind of weird when I saw it, is the barrel and the breech mechanism are all one piece of steel, which, like on a German Pak 36, similar size gun, the barrel and the breech are two separate pieces, and this is better because if either one of those becomes damaged, you can swap out just a part. On this one, if the barrel takes a hit from a piece of shrapnel, even though the breech is 100% operational, you have to throw the whole gun away or strip the barrel out of it and wait till you find pieces and parts to put it back together. But I just thought that was odd that they chose that, or they didn't plan on having them very long. This is the equivalent to throwing away all of the hundreds of hours of machine tool work that it took to construct the barrel because of minor damage. What would normally be a separate part. Breach, damage, replace the pieces. It's good. Barrel damage, replace the barrel. It's good. You're just replacing essentially one piece. So that's what made the other designs superior to this, in that it was more readily repairable and not quite so disposable. Next is my hot take on historical perspectives. I always get a little carried away when it comes to the manufacturing side of war and the logistical side of war, because people don't study that enough, and that's where wars are won. So whenever I see the waste, like the barrel on the Hotchkiss, one little bit of damage could render the whole thing useless, and all those man hours it took to manufacture it are just gone. And wars are won by logistics, not by generals or weapons or individual battles. It's not like Germany lost the war because they lost the Battle of Stalingrad. Stalingrad is always referred to as the turning point of the war in Europe, but it's a coincidental link. They happened at the same time. It's not causal. Germany didn't lose the war because they lost Stalingrad. The turning point in the war didn't come because of Stalingrad. That was an army, and it's sad that there's 600,000 men in an army, or up to 6,000 men. But it's not essential to winning a war. If you take the opening and closing dates from July of 42 to February of 43 and transpose those dates to the North Atlantic, something mind-boggling happened, and almost no one talks about it. Germany lost 100 U-boats, to the number 100. The figures are pulled from the book Iron Coffins. In the back there's some tables of statistics on it, and if you add up the monthly losses, it comes to 100. But Germany lost 100 U-boats, and they lost most of them in what was called the Black Pit of the Atlantic, which is out in the center where patrol aircraft from either Europe or North America, South America, Africa can't reach. There's this area that just you couldn't get to. Most of the German U-boats were sunk in that Black Pit. And here's the important part. They were sunk by single-engine aircraft operating off of aircraft carriers made out of Liberty ships. Now think about what that means. There is now nowhere in the Atlantic where a U-boat can hide. And every convoy had these little pocket carriers. They only had 4 or 5 airplanes on them, but it's all they needed. But now you could have continuous air cover on a convoy from shore to shore. and the Germans were not prepared to it. And that was the beginning of the march to roll up the U-boat force like a carpet, and they basically did. But again, going back to the man hours, each one of those submarines was approximately 750,000 man hours to build, and they lost 100 of them. Figure that out in years. That's time. You can't get back time. Once it's the only resource you have, you can't get back. And once it was gone, it's gone. And most of those U-boats never had a chance to transmit that they were sinking, or where or how. It wasn't until one or two U-boats said, hey, we were hit out of the sun by a single-engine torpedo bomber, an Avenger, an American Avenger aircraft. And then that's when the Germans really started having to up their game on aircraft defenses for U-boats while operating in the water, out in the middle of the Atlantic, which to them was unheard of. So that's how logistics wins wars, is when you can choke the other guy's logistics completely off while freeing yours completely up is obviously optimal, so you'd want to do that. But where the Allies really beat the Germans was, there's a book written by Ernie Pyle called Here's Your War. It's Ernie Pyle was a news correspondent who lived and fought in the field with the regular soldiers. And he was in North Africa, and he was talking to a German officer who had been captured, and he was explaining how he knew that Germany was going to lose the war while he was in North Africa. And he was taken to a rear area and told to sit down. There was no way to escape, nowhere to escape to, except the desert. And he watched a couple squads of GIs walk up to a truck that was loaded with wooden crates, and two guys grabbed a wooden crate down, smashed it on the ground, and in the crate were three steel 30 caliber ammunition cans. And when you opened that up, you grabbed and you pulled out the cloth bandolier with the 6 magazines of Garand ammunition in it, and everybody put on 2 of those, and they kept going until all the boxes were empty, and that was it. And when they were done, they just walked away. And the German officer realized the resources, the logistical operation it would take to be able to move. He looked at the wooden crate, the smashed wooden crate laying on the ground in pieces, and he started figuring out how many rounds of ammo were in there, how many rounds of ammo that put in the hands of a GI, but more importantly, that we had the excess shipping space to send wood that's protecting steel ammo cases. We had the extra shipping space to ship wood all the way to Africa. And that's when the German officer realized, probably not going to win this war, because he started adding up the millions and millions of cubic centimeters or meters it would take of wood on each ship just to pack 500,000 rounds of ammunition. And he was astounded, and that was it for him. He knew that they had lost. But there's other stories of logistics, the mind-boggling amount of logistics that needed to be moved, especially during World War II, the distances it needed to be moved. That was like just to send an American soldier to a rest and recuperation station for a couple days off from the line in the Pacific Theater, sending them back to Papua New Guinea or Guam or Guadalcanal, one of the secure islands that they had fought at the beginning of the war. The distance involved was insane. It would be like taking a guy fighting in Italy and sending him back to St. Louis, Missouri for a couple days, and then bringing him back to Italy to fight. Yeah, just the distances and the sheer volume of just stuff that was moved. To the Russians, we moved enough sea rations to feed It was either 12 or 14 U.S. Army divisions, which were about 50,000 guys, or 15,000 guys each. But we sent enough sea rations to feed them for 4 years through Tehran and the Persian Gulf and up through into the USSR. But we sent 750,000 trucks to Russia. Not the ones we normally use. These were Studebakers, a little different design. If you want to see one, most of the war memorials in the former Soviet Union that have Katyushka rocket launchers on them, look at the truck that they're sitting on. It's an American-made Studebaker. There's very, very few of the pre-war style truck that the Russians were using, or the Soviets were using. But so it always makes me laugh when people go, "Yeah, we won the war." America didn't win the war. The Soviet Union didn't win the war. I mean, the Soviet Union, and now, if you listen to them, they say, "Well, we faced the highest number of German divisions." More than half the petroleum products that the United States produced during the war went to the Soviet Union. So, I mean, there's a lot of different ways wars are won. But that's my rant on logistics and how wars are won, or should be won. But I hope you enjoyed that, and I hope you enjoy the piece I did on the Hotchkiss 25mm anti-tank gun. I was driving down the road the other day, about 5 miles from my house, and I got stuck in traffic for a minute, and I looked over, and sitting on the side of the road in front of a Veterans of Foreign War veterans organization, VFW here in the United States, sitting in front of their post was a World War II Hotchkiss anti-tank rifle, or anti-tank gun. I've seen the Hotchkiss before that were captured from the Germans, and they're German marked. This one isn't. But yeah, just kind of weird to see one sitting next to a street in a town in the middle of nowhere, Michigan. Well, not the middle of nowhere. It's not nowhere, but you can see nowhere from here. But so yeah, please go watch the episode. I'm going to stop talking now.